Welcome to 6 Million Seeds. I'm Meryl Fury.
And I'm Carrie Bruno. We are healthcare professionals and co-creators of this podcast.
Today's episode is brought to you by Urban Gardeners.
Welcome to 6 Million Seeds. My name is Carrie.
And my name is Meryl. And today we have the thrill and pleasure of interviewing Dr. Howie Jacobson. Let me read you his bio. Howie Jacobson, PhD, is a health coach and an executive coach to clients ranging from startup founders to established and rising Fortune 100 leaders. He is director of coaching at Bregman Partners and head coach at the Healthy Minds Initiative. He hosts the Plant Yourself podcast and has written a bunch of books. His mission includes helping kind and generous people grow their capacity and scale their influence. Welcome, Dr. Jacobson.
Thank you. It's fun to be here.
The pleasure is all ours.
Yes.
So let's get started.
So how did, going into the whole plant-based realm, how did you eat growing up? How did this start for you?
So I ate a very healthy standard American diet. So there was very little fast food. Almost all my meals were home cooked. And that said, there was chicken and beef and not so much pig products because we were sort of like Jewishly semi-kosher adjacent. But eggs and but just not a lot of fast foods. We never had like the packets of macaroni and cheese. I always got peanut butter and jelly on caraway rye. Like wow. I thought I was the most oppressed child in Jefferson Elementary School because I did not get Wonder Bread. And the other thing I would get is this sort of Hungarian Viennese spread called Liptauer, which to this day it was like a cream cheese with capers, like not a thing you'd think a 9-year-old would really groove on, and I did not.
But these were things your mom or whoever was making lunch anyway thought you should have, were good, appropriate things for you, right?
Yeah. My mother did the cooking, and she was not a great cook, but she put a lot of effort into it, and it was important for her that we ate what she understood to be a healthy diet, which it had its it had its good points. I did grow up eating vegetables, but I also had a prodigious appetite, and I had the metabolism of an Amtrak train, so I could pack away, like a dozen, chicken legs, at like a picnic or something. There was just like, and then of course when I went away to college, the food appeared to be endless and free.
Yes.
And so, I was untethered by any sort of, filial desire to like conform. And I just devolved into just eating just junk.
Okay. All right. Interesting. And how you grew up with other kids in the family?
I have a sister who's 14 years older. So she wasn't really a presence in terms of watching her eat or,
Yeah.
So then what turned the tide for you into a more healthy eating pattern?
So in December of 1989, my father died suddenly of a heart attack. And I was, 24. And for some reason, I'd never paid any attention to food or health necessarily until that moment. But I was like 2 or 3 weeks later, I was browsing in a Barnes and Noble, and there was a book whose spine suddenly jumped out at me. It was called Diet for a New America by John Robbins. And I have no idea. It was like, I don't know, going to a bookstore and suddenly like wanting to read this book on like, snails of Argentina. It was just like,
Right.
I don't
Very
know.
random, right?
It seemed very random, I'm sure there was an angelic force guiding my hand to the spine of that book. I pulled it down, started reading it, as you could do in Barnes and Noble in those days, probably with a piece of like a brownie.
Right.
And
Right.
as I started reading it, I was like, it changed my life instantly.
Hmm.
Like I put the book down, I was a sugar-free vegan.
Uh,
And 3 weeks later, I had sort of dropped all the college weight. I was back to size 31 waist, which I've never seen again.
uh, uh,
I felt good, and like that was kind of it, except that that was like, so 1990. Then like 5 years later, I had forgotten, and I was back to eating pizza and other stuff. And like, this is a thing with me. My wife points out that I will get on a kick and become like totally obsessed with this. Like this one day, I read an article about Teflon, and I threw out all our no stick. And we had some. What kind of language can I use on this podcast? Can I sort of be a little salty?
you could be a little salty. I am on occasion. She's not.
Okay.
I don't
Okay.
care.
So we had some good shit. And I threw it out like, nope, this is no good anymore. Like, and then like less than 18 months later, this package arrives in the mail. I'd ordered it from Amazon, and it's this no stick griddle. And my wife's like, what the? I was like, well, I would listen to Dr. McDougall being interviewed, and he said it's better to do no stick than to have oil. She's like, did you not, like, can we talk about that? So I know I have a history of like, if it's not on fire, like I will get on fire, and then as long as nothing, like I can sort of like slide back, completely forget that I'd ever been on this kick until somebody rubs my nose in it. Like, like my wife is kind enough to kind of remind me, of my insanity. So, and that kept happening, and it even happened. So in 2004, I stumbled upon the China Study by T. Colin Campbell, met him at a conference. Totally changed everything. And now my daughter is 8 and my son is 5, and that's when I go and I become, the tyrannical food fascist who's going to tell them everything they've been eating up to this point is bad and evil. And it's like, imagine you watch your toddler walking around holding like a gallon bottle of bleach, about to tip it in their mouth. Like you would kick the thing, like you wouldn't be subtle.
Right.
Your response
right.
would not be nuanced.
That's right.
Like I just saw like everything they were eating was like skull and crossbones over it.
Yes.
But at what age did they transition to plant-based, and are they plant-based now?
So I transitioned them around 2004.
Okay.
And, and I caused a lot of pain, and I did it in a very heavy-handed way. And, and I think my kids they're in their 20s now. They still have a complicated relationship with food, which is largely my fault. Like I made it very binary. There's like food you eat and stuff that's not food that you don't eat. And we connect, when it's veganism as well, it also has this ethical component. And so like good people do this and bad people do that. Like that was one of the messages. When you're telling kids who are 5 and 8, like there's only so much nuance you can bring to it. And so I remember getting like a call from a neighbor asking me to please tell my daughter to stop telling his daughter, why is your mother trying to kill you? Does she not love you? Does she want you to get cancer? Right. Like, and honestly, my thought at that moment was, oh, good for you. Like,
right. Score.
Like,
Landed
good.
that one.
Good. We have no friends, but we're self-righteous. So honestly, it's and apparently, according to my kids, I can still do that. And I don't know if it's, like the way the eyebrows go up if I see them eating something that I don't totally approve of. So my daughter is vegan. My son is not. He'll have to come to whatever he comes to, honestly, on his own.
Mhm.
And in fact, nobody else in the family eats the way I think they should eat.
There you go.
Right. And then, and part of my challenge of being a human being in a family is to let go of the desire to control that outcome.
Right, right. So I want to weave in a little bit about your book right here, because I think there's a curious juxtaposition we could make.
Oh, you're gonna throw that in my face.
Well, I have to, right? So you have a book out. Tell us about that. Tell us. I want to see how this could work.
Yeah. So the title of the book should be "Don't Do What I Did," because it didn't work, and it caused huge collateral damage.
Okay.
So in fact, that is the idea of the book. The book is called "You Can Change Other People."
Right.
And the idea is that we think like it's a provocative title. Our publisher really liked that title because I thought it was gonna, get people's attention and move books. And but we all believe like, oh, well, you can't change other people, you can only change yourself. And except we don't really believe that in action, because you see people trying to change other people all the time.
Yep.
But it doesn't work because we're doing it in ways that break connection, that come to people as critics rather than allies, that posit that we know what people need more than they know what they need. And what we end up doing is creating or, inciting resistance, right?
Right.
Because when somebody comes at you as a critic, your natural inclination for 99.9% of us is to defend ourselves.
Right.
Right. Now, we all know people who are like, if you criticize them, they're like, oh, wow, thank you. I didn't see that about myself. And we may know one person like that in the entire world, right?
Right.
It's rare. So, but we act as if everyone is that way. Like everything I say that I tell you that you're doing wrong, or here's some helpful advice, unsolicited. Here's why you should be motivated about this.
Right. The
Here's a
constructive
suggestion.
criticism. Yeah.
Right. That it comes from a place of I know more than you know less than me. And that's what creates the resistance. So what I was doing in my attempt to like I was in such a rush. If I had taken an extra year, right, they're still having their, brown cow, full fat, organic cow's milk yogurt. If they still had, the occasional chicken nuggets from McDonald's, but slowly I was weaning them, and they were leading, and they were understanding. Like it would have been much longer lasting. So like many survival adaptations that create immediate short-term benefit have a very high long-term cost. And that's what I discovered in the way I was going about it. And it wasn't strategic. If you had stopped me in that moment and said, okay, let's think about this rationally. Is this the way you want to be doing it? I would have said no. But it wasn't about strategy. It wasn't about rationality. It was about my ego. Right? It was like, I want people to see me as the kind of father whose kids eat perfectly.
Okay. Yeah.
Right. And the more I became involved in the plant-based movement, and we started going places as a family, I wanted them to look and say, oh, look, your kids are so energetic and slim, and look at their healthy skin. Is like, when I look back on it, it was a very self-centered agenda that I had. And I'm smart enough to be able to con people that, that I have deniability. There were no obvious fingerprints, but it was abusive.
Okay.
And it's very, it's taken me a long time to hear that from my kids and to understand the ways in which I really fell down. And so one of the things I try to do now, and it's still hard, like following my own advice in this book is the hardest thing I do. And I don't always do it well, because it takes a kind of vulnerability and courage that, is hard to come by.
So if you had to do it over again, I heard you say you would take it more slowly, right? And maybe try to pull some of your own ego out of the way.
Mhm. Right.
What else might you do? So I'm thinking in terms of our audience are probably parents. We're, expecting we're talking to parents and teachers and other folks who are in a position of influencing what children eat.
Hmm.
What would
All
you
right. So
say?
I'll give you a bunch. I'll give you a bunch of things.
Okay.
So there's a video that was up on YouTube until recently when my son begged me to take it down. He was like 5 or 6, and a friend came over and we made a smoothie for YouTube, and it was going to be a healthy smoothie. And I have to tell you, it was the most disgusting. Like, we couldn't have made it more disgusting for people. Like, carrots and spinach and lettuce and like, oh, here's some greens from the fridge. I don't even know what they are, but let's throw them in there. And it came out this sort of, shit stained greenish, whatever, like, and then, like mostly spinach, and I'm drinking it down, and it was honestly disgusting. And so like thinking about that as, oh, so my strategy was, let's go hard or go home. Instead of we could have made a plant-based smoothie with blueberries and strawberries and raspberries and even maybe a little bit of maple syrup or dates. Like, there were so many things that I could have done that they would have liked, as opposed to like, let's make your birthday cake out of the stuff that's left over when we juice carrots. So one thing is like, go incremental. You don't have to make everything like the worst case scenario for people who are trying to change their taste buds.
All right. I have to take notes on this. Hold on. Go incremental. Okay. All right. Go ahead.
Okay. Another thing is really let them lead.
Mhm.
So, within like, oh, what do here's the rules of this meal. What do you want to make? Or what would you like to try? Or why, what do you want out of life? I mean, 5-year-olds can tell you like, oh, I want to be an astronaut. Oh, well, drink Tang, right?
It's one way. For sure.
Right. Or, but whatever, like let their agenda have space. So it doesn't become your agenda for them. Be curious what they want. You can, the third thing I would say is, talking to myself, don't be so judgmental. Like, work on that in your own mind, so that you're not just putting, not saying judgmental words while your face is judging. Right. Because there's a way you can ask that question about like, hey, I'm curious, when you eat that omelet, how do you feel like in 2 hours or the next day? Where if you're honestly curious, you can get an honest answer. But when they sense the whiff of judgment, they're like, so how do you feel? Like, have you learned your lesson yet?
Yes.
And which shuts them down, which makes them unwilling to look at feedback. So there are foods that my kids would eat that would make them miserable quickly, like, and they, because of the way I was trying to get them to see it, sort of like pushing the dog's nose into the mess, like, no, they weren't willing. So I would say, drop judgment.
Okay.
And we have a whole process in the book about how to do that, because it's much easier said than done. But it starts with dropping judgment about yourself.
Yeah.
Right. So, I'm sort of making jokes here, but I think you can see it's painful.
Yes, I do.
And there are ways that I am working on forgiving myself that have to happen before I can approach my kids as an ally with their best interest at heart.
Yeah. That's really good.
Yeah.
Really powerful. Yeah. As we look at working with kids, and so the whole premise of this project is to help parents and educators and healthcare professionals come to an understanding about the value of giving children human food, right? There's already a whole set of kids that were born into regular standard American diet, and that's what they eat, right? And how to get a child to transition gracefully and long term and in a healthy way. And all these things you're saying are just really, really helpful, really great for the audience to hear this. And for me too. I was very much like you. I have 2 kids biologically and one young lady that I claim. She's like my fairy godchild. And I was probably the same way with my kids. My oldest one, he's, I mean, they're all now older than 21, you know, they're grown. But my older one, if he got sick around me, like, you know, he developed a cold, kind of gets sick. Oh, that was all kinds of reasons to give him the home remedies that I was putting together, which included, generally speaking, you know, like barley grass and cayenne powder and garlic oil and all kind of fun stuff. And he's like 4 years old, and I would just say, okay, this is what you get when you're sick. He actually told me not long ago. Now he's 30 something years old now. He told me some story not long ago about how he couldn't stand to eat, I don't know, it was like a green smoothie because it reminded him of those potions I used to give him when he was 4 and 5, you know. It's he's also an extremely adventurous eater. So he eats all kind of stuff that he knows is going to creep me out and freak me out, and then he sends me pictures of it. You know, while he's smiling with the fork going, "Look what I'm eating, Mom." You know, he does things like that. So yeah, I totally, I hear what you're saying, you know, about the heavy-handed approach and what it can do. And I totally value what you're saying too about, you know, being incremental and non-judgmental and getting your own ego out of the way. And yeah, that's great. Great stuff. Thanks.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a hard thing we're trying to do, to be different from the people around us.
Mhm.
Right? It's the hardest thing that humans do, is to diverge from the pack.
Yes.
And we're asking children to bear the brunt of that. Because, you know, I don't know, yeah, like my kids had a lot more play dates than I did. At, you know, like when I was in my 30s and they were young, like I wasn't like hanging out with like it's they were the ones. Like I you know, we would make friends with their friends' parents. Like
Yes,
they were
right.
the social nexus. And so to insist that, you know, like, look, if a kid has a peanut allergy, like you lay down the law, right? But there's also like, my kids were going to other people's houses and they knew what I wanted them to eat and not eat. So they stopped telling me stuff. It was just much easier because they knew I didn't trust them and they returned the favor. So, you know, like a breach of trust anywhere in a relationship, it's not limited to that part of the relationship. So there's a lot of responsibility I had to take in order to heal some significant parts of those relationships.
You
know, and I don't know the science of this, but I would argue that having good relationships in a family is at least as cardioprotective as eating, you know, greens every day.
Mhm.
Well, there is that whole thing
Yeah.
about you can die of a broken heart, right?
Yeah.
Mm.
If there was one thing you could tell our audience or anyone watching, ways they could make a difference or change their nutrition now, what would you say?
So I would say, you know, I'll be a little cryptic and say, like, change one little thing. And I have no idea what that is. Like, I don't know how I would possibly be prescriptive for everybody, but I'll bet everybody knows one thing you're doing that you could do differently, that you could do a little bit differently. Like maybe like one way to look at it is pick the worst thing you're eating. And however you define that in terms of the thing that makes you feel the worst, or the thing that is keeping you medicated in a way you don't want to be, or the thing that you feel like you have the least control over and it's dominating your life, pick that thing and make a slightly less bad choice next time.
Mm.
It could be like half a sleeve of Oreos instead of a full sleeve.
Mm.
Right. It could be you have 21 sodas a week, have 20 sodas and 1 sparkling water. Right. Like just pick something and create a system to make it slightly better.
Mhm.
And at that point, you've done a whole bunch of things. You have taken action, which is huge. You've taken action intelligently and strategically, which means it can be defensible action. It's not like, okay, it's the new year, we're going to go rush into, I'm going to change everything. I'm going to join a gym. I'm going to stop eating meat. And there's no plan for continuing, and there's no plan for refueling, right? So we're learning how to take positive action, and we're learning how to prepare for lifelong change as opposed to episodic and oscillating change.
I think about when you said the whole thing about New Year's, like the resolution, change everything all at once. That is, generally speaking, a recipe for failure, right? Yeah.
It's a recipe for failure in the presence of the same systems that created your old behaviors. So like there are times for, like, I have made clean slate changes at times in my life, but it was always traveling or a new job or going to a new school.
Uh-huh.
Like there are opportunities to sort of reinvent yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Right. But if everything else, you got the same friends, you got the same job, you shop in the same supermarket, you got the same people in the house, you got the same kitchen, the same cookware. Right. Like thinking that you are going to change, that you are going to be strong enough to overcome the inertia in your environment is delusional. The goal is to have these healthy systems in our lives supporting us. And it's as opposed to us constantly having to support them. Now, there is effort, like change requires influx of energy, but it's not the kind of energy that you can maintain forever. So when you have the energy to change your system so that it becomes easier over time to do the thing you want to do. How can I make this thing that I want to eat or this activity that I want to do more attractive, simpler, more in my face, more fun, right? Are there ways that I can be social? Like if I had thought about with my kids, we would have, done it more with their friends, and we would have had I'd had like a cooking party. Hey, let's make plant-based pizza and everybody come over, and yeah, we'll use the cheese. I mean, you remember like vegan cheese in 2005? It was pretty grim.
It was.
It was like, let's melt this packet of rubber bands over the, but now, like the stuff they have now, it's like, that's better than like jetpacks. Like we're living in the future, baby.
Right. Yeah.
This shit melts. It's made of peas and tapioca and it melts.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing stuff. Great. So given all the experience that you related about your some of the faux pas you made as you were trying to get your children to transition and show them the error of the standard American diet, the ways of, the ways that works on people's bodies, have you had a chance to go back and talk to them and ask them what would they have liked to have happen differently if they could go back and do it again and be in those situations again? What would they prefer instead?
Yeah, I have had those conversations, and everything that I've said that makes any sense today came from them. Okay. And I think like what they really have told me is, we wish you would have privileged the relationship over the task.
Okay. Yeah.
Like that, I think it kind of encapsulates everything. Like if your love felt conditional, manipulative, and we had to behave a certain way in order to get your approval. Like, don't do that. Like, just, right. And it wasn't true. It wasn't true. I wasn't conveying my true feelings. It wasn't like, you kids are terrible unless you eat
Tofu.
broccoli and brown rice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, I really want you to be healthy and have long, healthy lives. And I'm scared of what I'm learning about what could happen to you.
Yeah.
But that's not what got conveyed. What got conveyed was that they need to be a certain way in order for me to show them love.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And then of course there's all the stuff that comes with being a kid and perceiving what your parents are telling you, right? Their perception is a huge part of it, right? So even if, okay, so you had some of that stuff running, let's say, and then there's how they take it,
Yeah.
which shapes their world for a long, 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 long time, if not their entire life.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so, at a certain point, they'll either be in therapy or they'll become parents, and they will be able to understand where I was coming from
Right.
with more compassion. I think that, they're much better than I am, that I've ever been or may ever be, in terms of like, they're, like different generation. Like there's a sensitivity, not just to them, but to like their friends. Like I was talking to my daughter about this morning, because she tells me what to watch, like the good shows, on HBO Max and Hulu. And she was saying like there's this trend that she really likes about when there's a villain in a series, to really spend some time on their backstory to create compassion. So you understand, yeah, no, that what they did is inexcusable. And I can kind of see their pain, and I can kind of see how what they're doing is an attempt to mitigate it in some way, even though it's not going to work. And so there's just, it's beautiful for me to learn. And there's like, I can't undo the past. But I can be much more humble.
Right.
Mhm.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. The saying was that Maya Angelou, you know better, you do better. That's all you get.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
That's it. Wow. Well, thank you so much for this time and this conversation. And we really appreciate all of this wisdom and insight and personal experience. And literally, I took notes.
Yeah.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much. I appreciate everything that you do for the
Yeah.
world and
Oh.
for the health of the planet and the people on it and the animals too.
Well, right back at both of you. And
All right, Harry, we're going to let you go. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We'll
thank
be in
you.
touch soon. Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.
Bye.
6 Million Seeds is made possible by the generosity of Bruno Chiropractic, Acme Construction Metals, EXP Realty, and Deck It Out Builders. We thank you for your support.